So hi and good evening. And we are on chapter 3 of Tanya. And basically what chapter 3 on Tanya is going to do is it's going to discuss how we come to our right or correct or desirable emotions and how are emotions birthed, so to speak. What's the dynamic, how we get from certain thoughts or ideas to feeling the right things at the right time, and what are the feelings that we want to feel? We want to feel a love for Hashem that will motivate us to do the positive mitzvahs, and we want to feel sufficient awe of Hashem that we stay away from doing things we're not supposed to do. But basically what the Tanya is going to do is it's going to look at all of the emotions in the context of the idea of the tree of life and what in Chabad Chassidus we understand Chochma, Bina, Daas, leading to the midot, which are the 7 emotions. And the 7 emotions or the 7 midot, we think of them as Chochma, of Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus, but really they basically can divide into 2 categories. Things where we're opening our heart in an aspect of love, I want to get closer to Hashem, or an aspect of something that's more contractive, which is connected to a fear of Hashem, which is I don't want to be cut off from Him, so I'm going to hold myself back from the kind of things that could interfere with our connection. So basically what chapter 3 is understanding how Chochma, Bina, and Daas lead to the love and fear of Hashem. So that's the basic outline, and if you want me to go into it in detail, then we can go into it in detail, because there's a whole chapter on it. So you tell me, would you like me to go into it in detail?
The detail of the Chochma, Bina, and Daas, yeah.
The detail of the Chochma, the Bina, and the Daas, and how it leads to the correct emotions.
Of course.
All right. So basically, we're talking about the fact that our divine soul is a piece of God above, a chelek Elokai mimal mamish. And it's our soul that enables us to think about Hashem and develop feelings for Him and really for anything else in a way. But in chapter 3, we're going to look at the structure of the divine soul and understand how it processes ideas and generates feelings. And really at the end of last week, when we talked about this and the class didn't get recorded, mysteriously, my whole Zoom reality got a little compromised. I'm not sure why. But I realized that all of these things that we're talking about can really be used when it comes to cultivating the right thoughts and feelings about many things. Our relationships in our life, those of us who married, our husbands, or our children, or people that are close to us. In order to have the right emotions, we have to put the right cognition into the system. And this is what the Tanya is going to talk about, how things go from Chochma, which is an initial kind of download of information. It can come from a place that's higher than Seichel. It just sort of comes in, one awakens to it. We'll talk about Chochma in detail and how that Chochma needs to be developed through the process of Bina, and how that comes out as something that is we put into practice. And when we put it into practice, we bond to that idea, the way it says Adam knew Chava, when he was intimate with her, it says that he knew her, Da'a. He had Daas. It's kind of when we have a Chochma about something and we develop it in Bina, we extrapolate, we bring it down into our real reality, then we get to Daas, which means we can put it into practice. We become intimate with that idea so that it manifests in action. So that's really what we're going to look at. And the Tanya tells us that in each of our different aspects of our soul, the nefesh, which is our soul connected to our body, and our body experience, and our body sense, and our body awareness, and everything that the nefesh is connected to, which is our physical self, our ruach, which is our emotional self, and our neshama, which is our self-consciousness, our awareness, our intelligence. Each one of those, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, each have a little tree of life story. They have these 10 powers, Chochma, Bina, Daas, and then 7, what they call children, because Chochma, Bina, and Daas, Chochma is like the mother, it's really the father. Bina is like the mother, and the emotions that come from the coupling of Chochma and Bina are really the children. Our emotions are the children of our contemplations, so to speak. That's really what this piece of Tanya is all about. So, we've got all these and then it says that the Chochma and the Bina, they give birth to seven doubles. What does it mean, 7 doubles? So, this is a little more complicated. I'm not going to do this exactly, but anyway, the Chochma, the Bina, and the Daas they, in a way, there's a mother and a father giving birth to the children, but it's also and then the 7 midot are compared to the 7 days of creation. So you have the Chochma, the Bina, and the Daas giving birth to the 7 days of creation. So it's sort of, when we go back to creation, we say from Hashem came all of his articulations into everything that became the world, the sun, the moon, the planets, the animals, whatever. In a way, there's a metaphor. From Hashem's cognition came the 6 days of creation, and from our cognition comes our emotions, all of the offspring from the mommy and the tati, the Chochma and the Bina. Yeah, you got that as an analogy? Okay. And okay, so and then there's a beautiful letter written in 1805 defending the teachings of the Tanya to one of the critics. So Rabbi Shneir Zalman is going to talk about how important it is that we, in order to come to those right emotions, we have to have the right concepts, and we have to have the right cognition to give birth to the right emotions. And really, when he talks about the right concepts, the right cognition, he's also talking about the fact that we need to meditate, so to speak, on certain concepts and certain constructs. They're not just there automatically. We have to put them there, so to speak, and then meditate on them. So he wrote a letter, and what did he say? He said, in order for there to be reverence of Hashem, there must be deep contemplation and meditation. And then, this is very personal, I think this is very cute and makes a good point. Everyone in the regions of Volozhin and the Ukraine who have ever had a whiff of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and his disciples knows the explanation of this holy Zohar's teaching that Bina is the mother of the children. I love that. Bina is the mother of the children. So if you want to cultivate an emotion around any issue, or your emotion is not the emotion that you want, we don't, I mean, it's an interesting, it's a therapeutic tool, and it's a psychological tool, that the way you change emotion is that you change the constructs that you're thinking about, and then not only thinking, but you actually have to get to the point of meditating. So the children that we want to cultivate are the love and reverence of Hashem. This is still in Shneor Zalman's, Rabbi Shneor Zalman's letter. And they are born through meditation and deep contemplation. On what? On the greatness of Hashem. Each person according to his ability. And then I love the way he wrote this. Just as it's impossible to give birth to a child without a mother, so too is it impossible to revere Hashem without meditative work. So meditative work in this context doesn't mean sitting and just, calming one's breath and noticing the rise and fall of one's stomach and one's belly and rib cage and whatever. That's meditative work too. The meditative work that this is talking about is contemplating on all the incredible things Hashem does in the world. What is he doing? How he sustains the universe. In fact, they have specific things. Number one, how the universe is saturated with Hashem, how the universe is engulfed by Hashem. Those are two different concepts in Hasidus. We'll talk about them in a minute. And how everything is utterly insignificant compared to his greatness. Like he is so awesome and so encompassing of everything that everything else is kind of very minor, very, minimal in comparison. So according to the Alter Rebbe, when we meditate on those things, so the aspect of Hashem that is, the aspect of Hashem that fills all things, and the aspect of Hashem that surrounds all things, basically, and how everything is, is God. That's really the idea. So now let's talk about what is Chochma, and then we'll talk more what is Bina, and a little more what is Daas. So Chochma, the power of the soul to understand things is called by the name Chochma, which is also, you could break down the word Chochma, and I've said this before, into Koach Ma. Koach Ma. Koach, and Koach Ma is the power, the understanding of what is this thing, or what gives this thing its power. Koach Ma. What is it? The ability to say, what is this? An inquisitiveness and an openness to the unknown. So Koach Ma, you also want to know, the Koach is the potential of something. So suggesting at the level of Chochma, an idea is raw and undeveloped. And I was talking about this with a friend, and we were talking about, and it's fun to have friends with what you can talk about these things, as in we were chatting about what is Chochma. So we say it's Koach Ma, it's the capacity within our soul to understand the potential of everything, or what is the Koach of a thing, or the power of even asking what, right? The Koach Ma, right? The Koach of Ma. So that capacity to think about it, to try to wrap one's head around it, But in a way, Chochma often is, sometimes it's just an epiphany. It's just something that we kind of intuitively get as the word epiphany means something somehow just comes to you, or you get a flash of understanding, or you get somehow, some way your consciousness expands in some way. You don't always have a full understanding of what that's going to mean in your life, or how you can bring that down into reality, or into a realm of practicality. So we need to move in a way from this wow, or oh, or like I just had this unbelievable, I can just say again the word epiphany, but it's an undeveloped understanding. And then we have to develop it in trying to think how we can make that meaningful in a real way. And that is moving into the Bina department. So here's another quote. Here's another quote from another Kabbalist, I guess. His name is Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz, and he wrote a sefer called Shnei Luchot Habrit. And he says, when a person will contemplate briefly Hashem's greatness and majesty, he will feel reverence, and he'll also feel like, as much as he feels how great God is, he could also feel quite humble about his own smallness in a way. So, and then it says, so these are the contemplations, the meditations that we're supposed to be cultivating so that we get the right emotions. How awesome God is, how great God is, as I said before, how God fills all creation. Malay kol almim. Malay kol almim means Hashem fills all the worlds, but in a way he fills all the vessels of creation. Like every created thing is a little vessel, and Hashem is filling all of that vessel. That's mamalei, filling, kol almim, all the worlds and all the vessels. Then there's also soivev, kol almim. He surrounds all creation. In other words, he's the creation, and then he's all the space around everything that's created. In other words, there isn't anything else but him, right? So we're thinking about all of this. He fills all worlds, and he transcends all worlds. And everything else is really, pales in insignificance. And when we meditate on these things, this is supposed to ignite some kind of emotion. And then we're going to talk about the different kinds of emotions, that there's like a fiery, so there's a fiery flame of an emotion. And then there's, so we have yiras haroimemus, the awe that comes from Hashem's great majesty. And then there's also the awe that comes from not wanting to be separate, or not wanting to be punished. But the punishment is not that we get a patch. The punishment is that we separate and we lose that connection. We don't want to do that. So we're talking about that. And then and it's talking about this kind of thirsting. There's a story told about the Baal Shem Tov, that he came to a village and there was a healer that came to the village. And of course the Baal Shem Tov is always very modest, because he was also a healer. and this other person said that he can tell how anybody's doing, if they're well, they're not well, if they're not well, why they're not well. He can tell all of these things just by feeling a person's pulse. And the Baal Shem Tov, I don't know if the Baal Shem Tov said he can also tell everything from a person's pulse. I'm not sure what that part of the conversation was. But when he took the Baal Shem Tov's pulse, he said, you seem to be suffering. It's like you've got some kind of sickness. I can feel it in your pulse. What's the matter with you? And the Baal Shem Tov kind of explained that he's sick from the love of God. Like he's
Consumed?
Consumed. There was a word that I used before that was that hit the nail on the head, and I remember using it from. He's almost expiring from this perpetual yearning and kind of desire to lovesick, right? He's lovesick for Hashem, and this person could feel it in his pulses in a way. So there's a concept called Kalois hanefesh, and that my soul is yearning and almost languishing. It's thirsting so much for Hashem. There's like this emotional feeling, this yearning, this almost to the point of being consumed. There's this aspect of Kalois hanefesh. So in Chayvus HaLevavos, which is duties of the heart, Bachya ibn Pakuda in the 11th century spoke about this kind of yearning feeling, because all of the Tanya that we've been speaking about right now has all been this idea of from the Chochma, the Bina, and the Daas. When we contemplate, when we meditate on certain constructs, it's supposed to develop within us a passionate feeling, a feeling that's like a fire in an emotional fire in our being that wants to merge and come closer and bond with Hashem in a...
Like shluchim. Like shluchim.
Well, shluchim, it's kind of like shluchim. I mean, shluchim are an extension of the sender. They say that the shaliach is an extension of the sender. So if the Rebbe sent shluchim, then they're acting as extensions of the Rebbe. So in a way, we are all shluchim of Hashem. And the same way that the shluchim of the Rebbe would want to come every year to see the Rebbe, to bond, to come back to their source in a way. So the soul yearns to connect and to connect to Hashem. It's almost like the flame of a fire yearning, it always goes upwards, and almost like yearning to rejoin the fire kind of thing. Like every little flame has a impetus to kind of rejoin the primal fire. So this kind of like this yearning of the heart, a very emotional feeling. So it's the soul's desire to connect to the Creator. And the soul is pure, so it wants to go to pure and spiritual things. That's its nature, to go for the light, to join with more light. That's its instinct. Okay. So then it says this thirsting as a natural result of meditation comes from the aspect of fire in a person's heart and soul. It's got this yearning to reach upwards and to go upwards. And then the Tanya brings this idea that there's an aspect in the heart that's very fiery, that we cultivate a kind of a passionate yearning, but we do it through Chochma, through Bina, and through Daas. But the Tanya also talks about I'm not going to speak about that right now. Okay, now. And then the aspect of Daas is how to take this Chochma and how to take this Bina and then bring it down into action, into the word Daas implies a kind of a bonding and a joining. So it says Adam knew Chava. Didn't mean that he knew her. It meant that he bonded, he connected, he joined with her. That's really the full impact of the Daas idea. So just like physical bonding, Daas is a process of focusing your mind with a very firm and strong bond, an intense fixation of thought on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof without losing concentration. That you, the crucial step which generates feeling that are real and sustainable is Daas. To use one's Daas by personalizing an idea and sensing how it's relevant to me in my life experience. So it's not abstract anymore with Daas. It has to kind of come into the practical realm. So Daas doesn't add any new information. It's rather it's taking the existing idea and making it real and relevant. Because even if you appreciate the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof with your Chochma and your Bina, unless you bond your Daas, focusing your mind with intensity and consistency, you will not produce genuine love and reverence in your soul. But you'll just have kind of, it says, worthless delusions. Daas ensures the sustainability of the emotions and their energy. And it brings it to a more practical level. So what this is doing is it's setting up us with the basis to go into the next part, which is chapter 4, which we're not going to do tonight. But in chapter 4, it's going to talk about once you've inflamed this love and this awe and this feeling, and you've focused your mind on it, and you've made it, you've brought it sort of into a place where you can connect to it, and it flows down and influences your love and your midot, and you're drawn after Hashem. What do you do about it? How do you put that into action? And then it's going to talk about the fact that, strangely enough, according to Tanya, when you love Hashem very much, you might think that, let's say you love Hashem and you want to love him in the most perfect way. You might think that one day when your neshama is out of your guf and you can go up into the higher worlds and you can just bathe in the bliss of being close to Hashem, that is the highest level possible. And the Tanya is going to tell us that you might be, when you're in the world after the life after life, you might think that you're so close to Hashem, and now you're seeing the light. What the Tanya actually going to tell us is you'll still be more limited than that light. You'll still have a limitation of something of your own separateness from Hashem, even in the better worlds. But in this world, when we do a mitzvah, when we put our thought or our speech or our action into an actual mitzvah of the Torah, we're not just contemplating Hashem, we're actually bonding with Hashem, because Hashem and his mitzvahs, or Hashem and his Torah, is one, and Hashem and his mitzvahs are one. And so when we do a mitzvah in this world, we're even more our connection with Hashem is more close. We become one with Hashem in a way that in the other worlds, when we are neshama, not even in a guf anymore, no matter how much our consciousness will expand and we'll understand everything because we'll be, in the world of emes, we won't be able to actually bond to God himself in the same way, even though it's a little complicated to explain this because we are a part of God to begin with. And when we're not in a body anymore, you could think that we're bonding in an even deeper sense. But there's something that about grasping and connecting through a mitzvah that is the highest connection, higher even than what we can contemplate, higher even than the emotions. It's the action that we do when we actually do a mitzvah that transcends everything, which is sort of what chapter 4 will talk about.
So it's interesting that this was the topic of a dinner conversation tonight about how other Hasidim, they're very into not this world, but earning points in the world to come, the world to come, the world to come. And Tanya in Hasidus does the opposite. It talks a lot about this world being where it's at and not negate it. Yeah.
And I started reading a book by Dovbe Pinson.
Which one?
Reincarnation, near-death experiences, Gilgulim, and everything. I thought it just came out, but it actually turns out it was printed in 2015.
I don't think it's on the list of books in his books that I was reading.
Yeah, well, I just found it in a bookstore yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, last week.
Locally or in another?
It's at that bookstore that is next door to the restaurant that used to be called the Purple Pear, Primavera.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he says, as interesting as it is to look at previous Gilgulim, to look at, look towards days to come and the Messianic era and all that, is interesting as all that is, nothing compares to the importance of right now, in the moment, the present, and how we're dealing with our reality right now. Because everything that preceded the now all went into making us who we are now. And what's happening later is irrelevant. The only thing that is real for our life is right now. What's happening right now. That's the only thing that's real.
So I'm glad right now that you were able to go back and give over chapter 3.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
you're in for chapter 4.
Yeah, it was a sort of a synopsis, but basically the idea is to focus the thoughts to generate the feelings we want to have. That in the process of the tree of life modality, things originate in the Chochma, Bina, and Daas. And it compares it also like in the birth of a child. It says that the birth of the child, the energy of the child really starts off in the brain of the father. That even though biologically it's not a reality, the child starts off in the semen of the father, but that preceding that, and this is the analogy really, preceding that, it starts off in the brain of the father. That something about that child starts off as a cog, that starting point starts off in the brain of the father, and then it comes down and it comes down and it becomes, it comes down. So the same way the creation of the world starts off in the Chochma of the Father, which is Hashem, that everything starts off from that starting point of the Chochma of the Father, then it gets developed in the Bina of the Mother, and then it becomes Daas. And then from, the Daas is our knowledge, which then informs our emotions, but in the metaphor, it's then the process of creation, which leads to the 6 days of creation and Shabbat.
And in the Shemona Esrei, when you thank Hashem for Daas and ask for Daas, What are some of the kavanas for that?
Um, well, I think that um, we always want to have clear understanding so we can have right action, and clear understanding so we can have right feeling, and clear understanding so it should bring us to the right awe of Hashem, and to feed the fire of our love of Hashem from correct understanding and putting our cognitive faculties, as the Tanya says, to thinking about how great is He, how amazing is creation. I mean, and you can extrapolate it and then start spinning it in other ways, like
How can you help me with to have the right decisions today? You like the wisdom to make good decisions today.
right,
That's how I see it.
right, and all of these things of gratitude journal and think good and trust, trach good and sein good, and the value of positive thinking and all of that, they're all showing the importance of thinking in a certain way to influence the reality of our life, which then comes out in first our different emotions, but then, what they're going to talk about, what Tanya talks about next week's chapter, is the thought, the speech, and the action.
Yeah,
Also,
I've heard that so much. Yeah,
the thought, the speech,
that's where it comes from, huh?
those are called garments. They call garments of the soul, but then the Tanya says, in a way, it's a garment of the soul, but in another way, in Chassidus we say, "Ma'aser hu ha'ikar." You can't imagine the power of any good deed that you do. Any mitzvah you do, you literally changing the world. So right, right, right cognition to develop right emotions to bring you to the right feelings, but really thought, speech, and action, which are called garments of the soul, you're actually engaging with godliness in a very direct way, in a way that is incomparable to anything else.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Have a wonderful. I'll see you Wednesday. So have a good
Yes.
Tuesday, and we'll see you Wednesday,
All
Mrs.
right.
Shem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this. It's something I'm just ripe for now.
Okay, good. All
Okay.
right.
Bye
Bye.
bye.